Hi, welcome to this week's Dragonblade Authors Unplugged. I'm so excited. We've got a full house this week again. Not as full as it's been some other weeks, but still a pretty busy week at Dragonblade. We've got Lexi Post, Jenny Worstall, and Carol Coventry with us today. Ladies, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
So we also have an extra release this week by Maggie Anderson, so we'll catch up with her on another time, but I'll make sure I put her book in the comments so you can grab it if you haven't already. But let's start this week by talking about Lexi's book, which is Confounding the Earl, and it's book 2 in the Courting a Curious Lady series. And these are a little naughty, and I love that.
Carol, yes, are a little
naughty. Yeah.
Courting a Curious Ladies is because they go to this Belinda School for Curious Ladies, but they're curious in many, many ways. For those who don't know, this book is part of a series that is inspired by Louisa May Alcott's Little Men and Jo's Boys. And so each boy at Jo's school becomes a lady at Belinda's school.
Fun.
So in this case, our heroine is Dory, or Lady Dorothy, but her friends call her Dory. And she has a little bit of ADD. She tends to ramble, and unfortunately, her specialty at the school is philosophy, which makes it worse for people to understand where she's going, because she starts at one point and she ends up somewhere else. Has nothing to do with the first point, and it's a My Fair Lady trope. So, yeah, Lord Harewood, he lost his love, who was actually the third Mabry sister before she came out. And so he doesn't think anybody could, live up to her. And so he wants to make the school, which is named after her, the Belinda School of Curious Ladies, he wants to make it successful. And it's kind of rocky right now because what Lord wants an educated lady. And so he targets Dory and decides he's going to help her so that she can converse in a more normal fashion with gentlemen and make her a little more popular. Of course, he's very successful in doing that. And he finds her fascinating because he can actually follow her train of thought. She's the only one that challenges him because of the way she goes. So, and she does have an interesting way of looking at things in physical ways. So like she was talking I posted the other day this conversation where she's talking about human thought, what man thinks of existence. And then she says, and it's really quite a muddle. And he's like, and a muddle is what? And he said, so in other words, if he had a ball of yarn and it fell in a puddle, that's a muddle. And she's like, exactly. And she says, just everything she sees her thoughts in physical entities, which makes it really curious. But of course she does get a lot of attention from gentlemen at the house party at Lord Harewood's parents. And she's very successful. And he's trying to figure out why he's not happy about that. Maybe he might just possibly have made a mistake. He's not sure. It takes him a while to figure it all out.
I love that he loves the way she thinks, though, because that was the problem with Henry Higgins. He was not a hero for the ages.
No, and actually, Lord Harewood, he encourages her to speak naturally with him, but curb everything with everybody else because he enjoys it so much.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. That the idea of somebody seeing you and appreciating you for actually who you are is.
And I did want to say she's inspired by Aldolphus, who is Dolly in Jo's Boys and Little Men from Louisa May Alcott, and Dolly actually has a stutter. So they both have kind of a speech problem.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. How many more of these do we get?
Well, Jo's Boys she had like 12 boys and 3 women. So who knows where we're going? I am in the third book is already at the editor, and I have to send in my blurbs for the next 3. So we could go a long ways.
Fun. Well, the premise is great, and I love the setup for the heroine for this book. So that sounds like huge fun. So the next book that comes out this week is Maggie Anderson's book, and like I said, I'll put it in the comments. It's also a book too, and it's Falling for the Earl. There are lots of Earls. We're doing a lot of things with Earls this week. It's Falling for the Earl, and it's book 2 in Improper Ladies. So we also have kind of a not so ladylike theme going as well. But I'll make sure I put the link for that in the comments so you can grab it if you haven't already. And then the third book that came out this week is Jenny's book, and it's Breaking Free, and it's also book 2
Yes.
in the Heart of Bath series. Jenny, can you tell us about this one?
So the Heart of Bath is a series of Regency romances set in Bath, and Bath just happens to be where I grew up. So I know the streets and I know some of the houses quite well. At the end of book 1, the hero's sister seems a little bit fond of the hero's friend, George. So book 2 is Selina and George's story. And we think, because of what's happened at the end of book 1, that it's just all going to be quite smooth.
Mm.
But the beginning of book 2, they've been set up at a dinner party because everyone wants them to get together. So they're seated next to each other and so on. And it's really the first time they've had a chance to chat and get to know each other properly, because obviously in those days, you were very limited with how you could mix with the opposite sex. And unfortunately, Selina decides after the dinner that George is the most tedious and boring person I've ever met. She also decides he's a terrible show-off. In fact, he's not a show-off. He's just very shy. He's studying to be a doctor. And that's all he can talk about, that and his horse. And because he's so shy, he just starts gabbling. And his only conversation is about himself, which is unfortunate. So we have the misunderstandings starting. And we also realize that the two characters are totally opposite. So it's an attraction of opposites. They both feel an attraction. And George, in fact, has been in love with Selina for years, but he's too shy to ever have done anything about it. But Selina is a very feisty character. She wants to break free, literally, like the title says. She resents the fact that she can't, for example, vote, that she can't work, that she can't even go out of the house without her parents saying, oh, you have to take the maid with you or the footman, or, you know, I need to go with you because you mustn't be on your own. And she takes freedoms where she can. One of her favourite occupations is going up to the roof she lives in the Royal Crescent. She goes up onto the roof at night and just looks around, looks over the whole of Bath, sees all the little lights in the distance and just starts dreaming, what could she do if only she had more freedom? So we go on from there, and she gets quite obsessed with a lady called Elizabeth Fry, who is an English lady who reformed the prisons in Regency times, went in and tried to help people because the conditions were appalling. So Selina thinks she will do that as well. And she actually sets off for Bath jail. She finds out where it is and gets into the most horrendous mess, as you can imagine. She takes cake and biscuits and she thinks they'll just let her in. She's got a sort of basket over her arm, and it all goes very, very wrong. So George obviously rescues her from that. And then later on, she becomes obsessed with the cause of the abolition of slavery, because slavery had been abolished by 1816, but not the owning of slaves. Mm-hmm. And as you probably know, a lot of places in Bath and other cities in England, their wealth came from slavery. So it was a very current thing. And she goes to a meeting at the Quaker Meeting House in Bath, which is exactly what did happen then. And they used to have former slaves coming over from the Americas, giving talks to try and just spread the word, to make people realize, you know, this is where your wealth has come from. So that doesn't go quite as badly as before, but she does get quite frustrated because she's not allowed to stand up and speak. It's all the men speaking as usual. Anyway, it goes on like that, and you can see that the ending is probably going to be a happy one, but it's how they get there. Mm-hmm. That's with all our novels, isn't it? It's how we know what the endings are, but it's how they're going to get there, how they're going to sort out these incredible muddles and misunderstandings and try to sort of be the best people they can set in that time, which was so restrictive, especially for women. Yeah. I would have absolutely hated it. I don't know about the rest of you.
Well, it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast with Tara Moore this morning, and they were talking about women in business and watching all these, you know, happy-bellied men that are still up at the top and speaking, yeah, and not necessarily feeling like you're where you need to be. So we've made progress, but it would be good if we made more faster.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a long way to go.
But I love the setup for the story, and I love a good he falls first, and you know the when the hero is all in and he's just waiting for the heroine to figure out that this is a good thing.
Yes.
That's a lovely thing. So, awesome. And how many more books are there in the Heart of Bath series?
There's just one left after this. Yes, called Starting Again, and that's at December. That one comes out. Yes.
Awesome. So the last books that came out this week, or that comes out this week, will actually come out the day after this is airing, and it's Carol Coventry's debut, Dragonblade debut. Woohoo! Super excited about this one, and it's Counting on Love, which is book one in the. You're going to have to say it because I've tried to do it in my head. Taverstons of Iversley. I didn't even try to make the I a long sound. Every time I've been typing it, I have to go back and look to make sure I get the E's and the S's in the right place. Taverston of Iversley. Can you tell us about that?
Kind of regretting that Iversley, because it is, I don't even know how to pronounce it. So I'm going to stumble over my tongue a few times, I'm sure.
Can you tell us about this one?
Yes. So as you said, it's the first book in the new series, and it is my romance debut. I like, my personal favorite type of Regency romance series is the ones with the family connections, where the books are linked because they're members of the family. So my family is the Taverstons, and they're the 3 sons and 1 daughter of the Earl. And as in Counting on Love, the first book, the Earl has been ill for a while, and the family's he's recently taken a turn for the worse. So the family realizes he's probably not going to be around much longer. And this is particularly worrisome for the eldest son, Jasper, who is heir. And he's getting a little panicked and a little bit guilty, because although he's in general a very responsible, dutiful kind of Earl to be, he hasn't done the main thing, which is marry and beget an heir. And now he's starting to feel time pressure. So fortunately, it's the beginning of the London season, and there's plenty of women around, and the perfect lady appears, and that's Lady Georgiana Stewart. She's the daughter of a duke. There's no hint of any scandal attached to her. She's witty, and she's extraordinarily beautiful to boot. So she's perfect. And he decides, okay, she'll do. It's also her second season, and she's already rejected a slew of suitors. But Jasper assumes that she's going to say yes to him, because who wouldn't say yes to Jasper? So
she says no, right?
He's what?
She says no, right?
No, because for Georgiana, she's not about to swoon over the attentions of this handsome Earl. She thinks he's boring. She thinks perfection, that kind of perfection is just dull. Her real passion is mathematics. But she knows that she has to hide this interest. Her mother's made it very clear that she's going to have to hide this interest if she's ever going to catch a husband, which of course is the only real thing that a lady of the ton wants to do, is catch the perfect match. And she can objectively see, there's nothing wrong with him. He would be a great match. And her mother is pressuring her to accept him. So she kind of is resigned to the inevitability of this. And she thinks at least she won't have to go through another season if she says yes to him. But before the courtship can even really get off the ground, the Earl has a stroke, and all the boys are summoned home to be at his bedside. So they all go, and Jasper gets a little worried that somebody else is going to woo Georgiana while he's away. So he invites her and her mother and her cousin to all come out to the family estate where they all are now. And he uses the excuse to keep his sister company while they go through this process. Once Jasper gets there, he realizes his father. Because he thinks his father's going to linger a while. Once Georgiana gets there, she meets the other members of the family. So there's Crispin, the middle brother, Reginald, the youngest brother, and Olivia, the sister. And the 2 older brothers are definite alpha heroes, but Reginald's a beta. He's bookish, he's quiet, he's reserved. He'd rather be a scholar, but his family expects him to go into the church. But he's got like this quiet strength, and he's a strong sense of humor. And he's also handsome, just not as handsome as his brother. So he's also gotten this task from Jasper, who has asked him to straighten out the family account books. He's the brilliant brother. The accounts are a mess. Their old steward died and hasn't been doing his job for a few months. So he puts Reginald in charge of sorting out those books. And unfortunately, the books they're not adding up. And Georgiana kind of walks into the morning room and she sees him working with something and she kind of glances over his shoulder. She does all the sums in her head and kind of blurts out what the answer is. And she says, you know, the books can't be balanced because there's some money missing. And rather than being like appalled by the fact that she's so smart at math, Reginald accepts her help. And so
Like this guy.
so now, you know, you can kind of see where this is going to go. She not only sorts out the family account books and discovers where that missing money went, but she also falls in love with the wrong brother. So got a love triangle. We've got falling for the wrong brother, and a female character who's more interested in brains than in looks.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. And I can't imagine being stuck at the house with all the brothers and falling for the wrong one and then trying to figure out how not to show it, you know.
Right.
Like,
And he can't show it either because, you know, he doesn't want to step on his older brother's toes either. And he doesn't think he can compete with the Earl to be. So.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. And do we get a story for each one of the siblings?
We do. The next one will be Jasper's story. So we'll find out what happens to him after he loses out on Georgiana.
He still needs a wife.
He still needs a wife. He still needs the right kind of wife, which is a problem.
That sounds like so much fun, and we're very excited about your debut. It's on Saturday, so if you're watching this on Friday, you want to make sure you swing by the Dragonblade main page and catch all the links and everything then, and I'll pop them in the comments so you can get them if you haven't gotten it already. So we have a little bit of time left, and we missed out. Jenny reminded me we missed out last time talking about things that authors do before they author, and I think that this is so interesting because I think authors are naturally, like generally speaking, because I'm going to just generalize, are naturally. I know. I see that. See the giggle, Lexi. I was looking for a word, but there wasn't a better one.
Okay.
But I think that authors are naturally curious because you put yourself in your character's head, you build scenarios in your mind, you build worlds in your mind, and so I think you're kind of naturally looking for how things go together, how things work, how how people do certain jobs and do certain things. So I was curious if we could talk about jobs that you all have had before you started writing, either good ones or bad ones, or both. Everybody's just dying to jump in.
Well, yeah, I'll be happy to jump in because mine kind of led up into me being right. But first, I was a nonprofit executive. And when you run nonprofits, you basically burn out because you get low pay for 100 hours a week and you're always stressed. And so I did that for about 18 years. And then I decided my first love was always teaching. So I got into first teaching nonprofit management at Arizona State University. And then I ended up teaching English at a bunch of different universities. And of course, if you're teaching English, because I wasn't English major in college, you get to reread all those lovely classics, and you also teach students how to put a sentence together or multiple sentences together, paragraphs. And so my background is a humanities-based college. So for 2 years, we studied portraits of greatness. And so my background has been very like a generalist, learning about art and about music and about history and philosophy and all that, which has really come into play very nicely with this current series because each of my curious ladies is studying something different. The first one was geology. And then we have, what's this one? This one's philosophy. Next one is weapons. Then after that, we've got astronomy, ornithology, literature. I did get literature in there because at least I know that really well. But yeah, that's what I did. And I would say of my 3 careers, writing's my favorite. But the teaching was really fun to and my last teaching in person position was at the University of the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean.
Oh, fun.
And my students, I loved my students. They were predominantly women. I might have 2 men in a class. And they were very, the West Indian culture is very assertive on the female side. It's a matriarchy culture. So we had a lot of great conversations. Half the women in my class wanted to kill Dr. Frankenstein and take the monster home with them. So it was, and anything they said came right out their mouth, like whatever they thought came right out. So, and they got my sarcasm. We were on the same page. They were just amazing. So I really enjoyed it. But after I left the Caribbean, I was like, well, I'm never going to have that great of a student in person. So I did do online teaching and then got into writing. So I've had a lot of different experiences that have helped create what we create.
Yeah. You said about burning out from doing nonprofit stuff, and I imagine that would be like just so incredibly part of the job because what do you cut? I mean, everything that needs your attention really needs your attention, and it would be very hard, I think, to set up boundaries to not let it just take over everything. So
you're always understaffed, and you never have enough people. You never have enough money. Yeah, it's a tough position. I really feel for people who run nonprofits, and whenever people say, "Oh, but 15% of that dollar is going to paying salaries," I'm like, yeah, and they deserve it.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we think we don't need to pay people to do things we want them to do. That's we just haven't quite matched that up yet. But the teaching thing sounds great, and I can absolutely imagine having engaged students is really just a joy. So awesome. So Jenny, what about you?
Well, the very first job I had, I was still at school, and a bunch of my friends, we all travelled to Guernsey, which is a little island to the south, and we had a holiday job, which is just quite bizarre. It was to do with carnations, and carnations grow with the flowers going off in many, many different branches in the early stage. But when you buy them in the shop, it's just one single stem, and that is because teenagers work in the greenhouses just snipping off the side buds, and it's disbudding. And that was our job. We had to go into the greenhouse in the middle of summer. It was 1976, which was a very, very hot summer in England. And we had to literally disbud the carnations. So after that, we thought it probably was worth going to college and getting a proper job. So I went to music college and I became a music teacher, which I absolutely loved. So I did music teaching my whole career. So I worked in secondary schools, which is age 11 to 18. And I did the whole bang thing, the orchestras, choir, recorder group, and the academic music. I just loved it. And I can honestly say that I always learnt far more from my pupils than I ever taught them. It was really delightful. Once I got married and had children, I also did piano teaching from home. So, and I love that as well. To teach a child individually, I think is a real privilege. You really get to know them, especially if you start them when they're very young and you take them right through and they leave you because they're going off to college. You've been quite formative in their education. And I enjoyed that very much too. I'm also a keen choral singer. I met my husband many years ago in the BBC Symphony Chorus, and we now sing in a choir called the Royal Choral Society, through a concert in the Albert Hall actually. And so music is a really, really strong part of my life still, even though I've retired from teaching. And it always comes into my writing. I've always written about music. And I started writing when I was still teaching. I used to just snatch little moments of time because I wanted to write, but I didn't have enough time to write novels. So I wrote short stories. I did a lot of short stories for women's magazines.
Oh, fun.
But as soon as I retired fully from teaching, I thought, that's it. I really want to get on with novel writing.
My music teachers are some of the teachers that I remember the very best. I took lessons forever and ever and ever. I have absolutely not kidding at all, no talent, none. I took violin lessons, piano lessons. I took in the choir. I have no musical ability, but I loved it so much. And my teachers were so lovely. And there's something about sitting in a room with somebody, just them trying to master something, like trying to work really hard to master something, and them rooting for you. You're like trying to help you do that. It's a fantastic thing. So I can absolutely imagine that would be a very satisfying profession. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. And I'm glad you guys still get to sing.
Yes.
Something about singing in a choir where you have everybody vibrating around you is just like,
And it's just lovely to be part of a tribe, isn't it? To just be with people. And if you have to drop out for a few notes, they're there to support you. I mean, it's a really lovely thing. Yeah. I recommend it to anyone. There's a choir out there for everyone.
And I can attest, you don't have to be a good singer to be accepted. Awesome. Well, Carol, what about you?
So I was a pathologist. I was a pediatric.
No way.
And I did that for 30 years. So it's hard to remember what I did before that, which was, odd jobs. But yeah, so I don't know what else to say about it. I loved the job. I really did. But I loved the work, but I got tired of working, getting up, going in. And so I retired 2 years ago. I
was saying 2 days was going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I wrote really fast. So, and I've been writing all along, in my spare time, and to get away from medicine, I was writing, but I didn't really dig down and start the whole serious process of writing until I finally retired. And I can say that one of the happiest days in my life was the day I walked up to my boss and handed in my pager. And so I no longer have to be afraid of electronic noises. But yeah, so that was my job.
Awesome. So as a pathologist, how do you spend your day? What is your day look like?
Oh my gosh. So most of what I did was looking at slides under the microscope. Whatever the surgeon took out, whatever the gastroenterologist took out, they would send it to me, and I would, process it. And then the next day the slides would come out, and I'd look under the microscope and make a diagnosis. Ideally, that's how it would work. I also did autopsies, which was not my favorite part of my job, but fascinating. It never really bothered me to do autopsies until I had kids of my own, and then it started to really sink in more, and it affected me more. But that was part of the job. So so that's how I spent my days. A lot of microscope work.
I would imagine you would have to distance yourself to be able to see things objectively without attaching emotional things.
Right. It was easier actually. It was actually easier doing the work than it was reading through some of the charts. That's what really got to me, was watching, when I did autopsies, watching the decline, and just imagining, what was going on in the parents' heads and things like that.
Yes.
So, but I was always, always grateful. This is horrible, but I was always grateful that if I made a diagnosis that this is a horrible thing to have, I never had to tell the patient that, or the patient's parents. Yeah. I would tell the patient's doctor, and the doctor had to break the news. So, so that was, I guess, a blessing on my side.
A little bit of a separation there.
Right. Yeah.
I imagine that would be very challenging work, and also very fascinating work too at the same time.
Yeah. It was a great profession.
Awesome.
But I'm liking writing now more.
I can imagine. And there's something really lovely about being in control of the world that you're creating, so that if something bad happens, it's because you decided that the bad thing had to happen, not because it just comes up and whomps you on the side of the head.
Well, sometimes, sometimes we don't see it coming, though. Those characters just do what they want.
Yeah. It's funny. I think it was Jan Dietrich who had posted in the author's loop this past week about crying while she was writing. And Catherine Levesque came back and said, yes, absolutely. And I do think that there are those moments where you may have a character may need to pass on, a father or a mother or someone in the story. And you have to figure out how to hold your emotions in check so that you don't end up in a Joan Wilder kind of sobbing fest at the end. I've had some times where people have called and said, how are you doing? It's like, not good. This is why, because I had to kill him, and I didn't. He's such a nice man, He's such a nice man. So I do think that there are those moments.
Then there's the flip side, somebody kind of pisses you off in the store, and you're like, oh, I think I can kill this person off in my next scene.
Yeah, there's villain material everywhere you look.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, it was delightful talking to you today. Carol, it was great to finally have a chance to meet you. I love when we get to actually meet in person, because I spend so much time on my computer talking to people and not enough time in real life. So this is wonderful. Ladies, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I'm going to put all the links in the comments so you can find them. I'm going to say the same thing I say every week, because even though it makes me feel like a used car salesman, it's true every week. Dragonblade books are their best deal on pre-order and release. You want to grab them right away. If you don't get them right away, you can always read in Kindle Unlimited. So you don't even have to think about it. Just grab them and go. All right, ladies, thanks again for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.